You are watching Showbiz Cheat Sheet, and I am here with Survivor 44's Claire. How are you doing, Claire?
I'm doing as good as you can be. Happy to chat, happy to be here, but obviously devastated and gutted, but
Yeah, definitely some fans are as gutted as you. My first question is, it felt like before Tribal, Jeff made it clear that he was kind of judging your tribe's choice of you sitting out for multiple challenges. Did you ever talk about his comments after the challenges with your tribe members?
yeah, when we would come back, we would like debrief a bit. And I remember once or twice people would be like, like somebody would be like, yeah, it's kind of rude that Jeff just like called you out. To me, honestly, like maybe that was just like, I love a good like banter back and forth. Like I like to spar a bit. So for me, like, I feel like that was kind of like indicative of me and Jeff's relationship. And like, I read into it insofar as, yes, this is a blatantly obvious thing that Claire keeps sitting out and people are noticing. But like Jeff saying it, Jeff calls me out for me being dumb all the time. And I call Jeff out. Like, so I thought it was kind of fun. Just like, as a super fan, being able to like spar with him in any way. But yeah, we definitely would talk about it. And like, most people were like, oh, it's okay. Like, don't think about it. And so I was like, okay.
Okay. What did you call Jeff out for?
I think you saw in the first episode, I'm just like, all this for a Flint. And like, just kind of like, you hear me yelling on the bench at all times. I'm not allowed to help my tribe from the bench. So all I could do is just like make funny comments and cheers. And so sometimes if Jeff said something funny, I'd like parrot it back. It wasn't like, I just
Yeah,
liked
yeah.
the joke, and Jeff would sometimes talk back to me. So it was like somebody to talk to.
Yes. Did you decide you were going to sit out before you even hit sand, or did it just play out that way once the season started?
I kind of played out that way. It definitely, I think, like one of the big factors was when Bruce left. Honestly, like when Bruce left, which was so heartbreaking and devastating, we knew in advance, because the journey they had talked about it, and we knew Matt had told us, and so um, I had a feeling. I was like, okay, two people are going to be sitting out from each of the tribes, and so there was something in the back of my head that was like, if somebody I want to like get to know more or be near sits out, this might be a good thing. That plus the challenge just being like absolutely brutal looking. When Matthew put his hand up, I was like, I will sit out with you.
All right, let's talk about that. Matthew sat out. We saw you tell him about Matt losing his vote and having the proof. What other kind of conversations were you having on the sidelines?
Oh, we had so many conversations. So just for reference, like Matthew was loving watching the challenge, and he, I think, is more of a rule follower than I am. So I'm like slowly just being, hey, crazy challenge to sit out, like trying to make like a little bit of just like eating well over there. And finally, I started to get some information. So we started with like confirming that we had the same story of the journey. But I noticed really quickly that he mentioned the exact same story, except he mentioned like he'd never mentioned the shell. And the little like devil in me was like, I should give him some information anyways. And so maybe he knows this, didn't mention it, or maybe he doesn't, and let's go from there. So I remember just kind of being like, a little shell, I don't know. He just showed us a shell. Maybe she lost it, whatever. Like I said, it's so throwaway. And then I remember a few minutes later, he looks at me and he goes, wait, so it was like a shell? And I knew. I was like, oh, it's landed. Like this is in his brain. I caused some havoc. And from that information I gave him, it like opened him up like a book. So at that point, he started telling me about the bird cage, about Brandon having found the idol, the whole group knowing about it, the fact that there was a fake idol. He just started sharing and sharing and sharing. And I got a ton of information on that bench, got some tribe dynamics from him. He was very, once I gave him something of worth, he reciprocated. And so that was a very fruitful conversation. And like, devastated that I'm out because I really was just dying. I was like, I want to work with this guy. I want to get together. We are both sneaky little people. Let's work. And unfortunately, like, didn't make it past my first vote out, but it was like a very fun, very like thrilling. Like I'm playing Survivor, even though it looks different than a normal game. Like, yeah, I'm not out there pushing the blocks, doing the challenge. I'm making moves. I'm playing, and I'm playing different. And I'm playing the way that I want to play as myself. And I kind of knew it was like a big game changing thing, but I didn't know to the extent that it would like, I didn't even know if they had cameras on me. And
Yeah.
so it was fun to just see it play out.
So, is there technically a rule that you're not supposed to talk on the sidelines?
So the only role I'm aware of, and I know I shouldn't talk too much about production, but my understanding is like I can't help. The only roles I always communicated, you can't help your tribe, so I couldn't tell them how to move the puzzle. I can cheer them on though, and I actually even asked before we started, like, is it okay if I chat with him? And they said okay.
Okay.
And I'm kind of a big ask for forgiveness, not permission. So I
Right.
was at that point, I was like, I'm gonna do it until somebody comes up to me and says stop talking, and that was my plan.
So some people were like loving your role. They were comparing you to sit out Queen Sandra and all of this. But yeah, at the end of it, it became a bigger topic when it was time to go to tribal. Are you kind of worried? Because there have been a lot of successful castaways who sat out for multiple challenges. Are you
Yeah.
worried that maybe a new trend will happen that future castaways will be like a little bit more worried to sit out repeatedly?
I mean, I think the trend is clear already. I think the trend right now is you should be a little afraid if you're a small woman or a small person going into three tribes, right? Like that's just how it is. I remember seeing Maddie go home and be like, that's weird. She's kind of like my height, my age-ish. I didn't know how she went home. Then I remember Tika walking in and seeing Helen was gone and being like, so if Maddie's gone and Helen's gone, well, and being like, oh no. So I think that people are always afraid of appearing weak for certain reasons, but I think especially now we're seeing like it makes sense, right? It's you if you don't think you're going to swap, you're just trying to get to merge with a group of 6 people. It makes sense why you want people like big people. Like Danny is a beast at challenges. Of course, he's going to be somebody who his name never comes up at all because he's somebody who we needed to get to the merge and we were looking at the merge. And so I think that's more of the trend that people are a little bit more aware of now and a little more afraid of. Whether or not you're on the bench or not, you're still going to be perceived the same. Like they were going to see me as weaker than themselves, whether I was there or not.
Yeah, that's fair. A lot of people have different suggestions. Like you said, doing more of a tribe swap, maybe having a bigger tribe and then changing up the challenges. That's the common solutions I'm seeing. Are there any others that you can think of, or you're just on?
I think that's a big thing. I also think it's cultural, right? Like I think in my ideal world, I was not thinking about tribe strength. I was thinking about who I trust, alliances. You saw it on Tika, even like maybe Carolyn wasn't always the best in challenges, but she made the right moves, made the right bonds, and she stayed in. So, right, there are people who are able to navigate this. I think the biggest thing is people understanding and valuing different things. And then also, like, there's this awareness level, right? When you look at the challenges, of course, tribe strength seems so important, right? You have to push the block up, you have to pull the rope, but every single challenge gets decided by the puzzle, right? And so like in the end too, it's like Soka, we were consistently getting to the puzzle first, but we would start losing ground at the puzzles or at the snake puzzle. It was always then that we were losing it. So yeah, we had this like 5-minute head start, but the puzzles are taking longer. So it's this weird thing of like intuitively everyone should look at this and go, does tribe strength really matter? Like, shouldn't we be going for brains or people who can do that back end closing deal? But because it's so front of mind and it is such an inhibitor, there is this perception that you need to do tribe strength. But like, you could also just not. Like in 41, you saw Abby and Tiff and Liana deciding we got to stay strong. And I think what it is comes down to is people valuing what they value. Heidi did not value me enough as an ally. She valued tribe strength, and that was her choice.
Was Heidi your number
And
one? Because I was very curious who you considered as your number one on that tribe.
I felt like, and this is how I'm like my social life is honestly, I feel like I have a lot of like people I'm very close with. Heidi, I thought was like somebody I was incredibly close with personally. Me and her probably, other than Franny, had like the closest like individual bond, like outside of the game. I would want to meet her and do all that because we talked so much about our families. She reminded me of my mom. And so that was it. I was one of the few people who was talking strategy with her. So like she was definitely up there and she was somebody I wanted to work with. I thought she would be a little bit more rational than she ended up being, but like, I thought she was rational. I definitely feel like Franny was also kind of my number one, despite I knew her and Matt were number ones too. But like, again, I wanted to keep the options open. And definitely,
Matt.
yeah, yes.
We seen you pitch to Franny. Okay, I think it's easier to take out Matt. From our perspective, we already, and you saw it too, they're flirting, they're very close. What made you think that that angle was going to work with her.
To be completely honest, on that day, once I knew I was kind of talk to Danny, I was gung ho with whatever Franny wanted, and Franny really wanted Josh. So yes, I definitely like in the episode said that, and at some point on Island, I definitely said maybe Matt, especially early game, like. For the first two tribals, Matt was kind of the person that me, Heidi, Danny, and Josh were agreeing around. So I was trying to bring Franny in, being like, because I was going to probably go that way if three people were going to do it, but I wanted Franny to be clued in and part of it. So I let her know. But on that day when my back was against the wall, Franny and Matt wanted to work with me, and Franny wanted to get Josh out. And so I was like, you say the name, I will do whatever. And all we needed to do is get Heidi, which we did not. But yeah, so it was definitely like Josh was the target that day. And kind of the only focus I had was trying to get Heidi to see me as like something of value.
I did have a question about Josh. How was it that he seemed to have floated to the bottom? Like even Franny calls him suspicious, and we're not seeing him much. So what's going
I
on?
know. And Josh is so lovely. So like I just hope that we get to see a lot of him because he's so fun. But Josh is just like one of those people. He walks like a ballet dancer. He has more muscles than I've ever seen in my life. Like literally, I didn't know you could have that many abs or muscles like anywhere. And he's just a little bit more like shy and guarded than someone like me, someone like Franny, someone like Danny, who are just like blah. And that plus I think like we didn't see a lot of our like backstories because we were safe for a while, but like Josh was lying to us about a lot of parts of his identity, reasonably so, right? Like he didn't want to tell us he was a surgeon. I didn't tell everyone I was a venture capitalist. So like that he was kind of like didn't want to talk about how he got his scars because I think he thought, sometimes people with like really compelling stories are threats to people, not to me. But so I think when you start to like hold a lot in, it makes it way harder to connect with people, right? That's like those are core parts of his identity. And I think it like weighed a bit on us because I never felt like he was fully being himself to me. And like watching it back, I now know. But I think that was like made it much harder to connect. And he also just would kind of like slink around with his like turned out walk. And like he just was like just a little,
Interesting. So he didn't come up with a lie. When you would ask him a question, he would just like evade.
He would lie. Like he told us he was a personal trainer. He told us that his scars were like an appendix removal. And I was like, I feel like appendix scars are not that big. But then it wasn't like he was actively lying, but he was definitely just not sharing as much. Like I am somebody who I'm just like, here's everything about me. Here's what I think. Here's what I like, blah, blah. Franny's very similar. Matt's very like, you see it. Matt day one is like, I just got dumped. Like you hear everyone sharing. Heidi's sharing about her experiences. I'm learning about Danny's daughter, his wife, like, and I just knew way less about Josh. And I think obviously social bonds are not the way you stay in always, but it was definitely like harder to connect at that moment. But he is so lovely. It's just like when you're in a room full of people screaming, if you're the person like talking at their regular volume, you sometimes get like pushed to the back.
Makes sense. All right, going back to the whole Franny and Matt. You have a memorable meme of you looking disgusted. It was used after they're flirting, but do you remember what you were actually making that face to? Or
I
was
have no idea. I would guess it was something stupid Danny said. I feel like I made that face most of Danny, but I also definitely could have made it. Like I've now know, having watched the show back, that I am no poker face, incredibly expressive. And like I definitely like I'm a person like I don't like PDA. It's not for me. I love that they got to make the strong bond. I would have done a little bit sneakier, but like I don't think it was at them. Like I was so pro them being it. And I think you hear me in this past episode being like, they can go geek out. They can go do their thing. I was never worried that them being close would mean that I wasn't part of them. And so like for me, I loved that reel because it was so funny and I got to like laugh about it. But like I'm pro them. And so it's really funny to see it. And like I think I just probably gave the best reactions of the bunch. But yeah, it was like I was like peeing my pants laughing watching that. And like I've used that meme now like 12 times because I just think it's so funny.
there a lot of PDA going on?
not like PDA, but it would just be, you just hear them giggling. Like they'd be looking at the stick bug, giggling. They'd be talking about their whatever. Like they were just so drawn to each other in this like gorgeous way. Like I love it. It does feel like, I grew up on Survivor. So I remember watching All Stars and being like watching Rob and Amber slowly like fall in love and come together. And so even as a super fan, you're watching your two closest allies get close. And I'm just like, it's so cute. But like honestly, they were getting close in a way that it like, yes, they were talking strategy. I'm sure I knew that, but like they were really just forming like a personal connection and bond. And like I was forming bonds with people, I was learning about people. And it was just like really cool to see two people who maybe paths would have never crossed get to just start to like know about each other. And you could see them coming out of their shells and becoming like more and more like Matt, as you see, he's starting to get more confident. He had a couple shakeups early on, and it's like really fun to see the ways that Franny helps bring that out. Other things bring it out. And so I loved it. I do hate PDA. And I also think that nerds are funny. And so that together gave me some reactions, but like I am a stan.
All right. One more question. Gonna have to really pick. Okay, so do you blame Danny for being the reason you got out simply because he did plant a fake idol, and people were saying, well, we can't get Matt and Franny out because Matt has an idol? And also, were you just surprised because you were like, how dare he think he's smarter than me, and we see all the scheming he's doing?
Okay, so I think to answer this, so first, like, I don't blame him. I give Danny credit for my vote out. I give him the credit for a move that I think was a strategic thing. Like, I'm definitely was going to be a threat if I made the merge. I feel confident that had I gotten there, like, I would have crushed. I would have probably wanted to work with them because I'm hyper rational. I was like, if we have the numbers, let's ride with them to the end. But so I don't blame him. The people I do blame are everyone who's saying, I don't really want to vote Claire out, but I don't want to rock the boat, right? Like you keep seeing, and it really was like that. Like Heidi was saying, I actually like Claire more. I work with her more, but I don't want to upset Danny. You even have Franny was like reasonably so. She was pushing as much as she could in. She should have voted against me. I agree. Like, but it like the people to blame are myself for getting myself voted out somehow. And the other people who like went along with it, even though they didn't. And so I credit Danny 100%. Good read. Glad he went after me. I think it's valid. And the only other thing is I feel like the part that I was so surprised about was not him coming after me. Because again, I started around day 6 to like really be like, Danny seeming to like not vibe with me. But the thing that was like the audacity that Danny had to pretend like to think that he could blindside me was so offensive to me. Like the minute he told me the plan, which was like right when we got back, me and him go to the water well, and he starts being like, okay, so the plan that I've already made is we're gonna vote Matt, but we're gonna use you as the decoy because you're like obviously the decoy, right? And I was like, he's voting for me and he won't just say it to my face. I pulled him aside later and I was like, just tell me, like, what can I do? Whatever. And he's just not looking me in the eye. He's not doing whatever. So I was just like, these old men, not old, but like these 35-year-old men think that they're pulling a fast one over on me. I know what's going on. And I think I tried to make that very clear. Tribal, I made it very clear with Heidi. Like one thing that this vote was not, it was not a blindside. I knew it. It was the worst day ever because I was just sitting there trying to prove my worth to Heidi. But like that was the surprise, was that Danny thought that I was like dumb enough to not pick up on that.
Got it. That clarifies a lot. Well, thank you so much. I really do hope to see you again on the show because there's just so
Oh,
much potential there. Like my dream casting is like you and Shan.
I love Shan. And I was thinking, like, again, I didn't apply. I've been a fan since I was 4. This is my first time applying. And a lot of it was honestly because of her. Like, seeing a Black woman who had so many layers, like, yeah, she was a villain. Yeah, she was sneaky. Yeah, she had an interesting backstory, but she was still fun and goofy. And I was like, that is a complex character. And I thought that was like so badass. So, yeah, put me in. Give me Shan. I want to meet her. I love it. I have a chip on my shoulder. I hope I get to play again too. But it is what it is for now. This is like the end of my current chapter, but I'm excited to watch the rest of the season as like a pure fan. And I'm rooting for some people more than others. But it's been so lovely to chat with you, and thank you for taking the time and appreciate it.